So this section is about fermented foods, and there are very few foods I recommend across the board. I don't actually know if there are any foods I would recommend across the board to everyone except lacto-fermented vegetables. Okay, so lacto-fermented, what that refers to is, I don't even remember, it's lactose in the vegetable that turns into lactobacilli, which is the microbe or the whatever, the germ or whatever that actually lives in your gut. So what are we actually talking about here beyond the science? We're talking about pickles. We're talking about the traditional way of preserving food before fridges existed. And what they would do is generally just take some salt and some water, or they would just let the water from the vegetables become the water, and they would salt the vegetables, and the vegetables would pickle. And the cool thing about salt is that the salt level actually kills all the harmful microbes, except for the lactobacilli, which also naturally occurs in the gut. I mean, things like this really make you wonder about like the Gaia principle. But anyway, so it's just fascinating. But this is the original pickle, and then later came the vinegar pickle, right? But that's a later derivation of pickle. And the lacto pickle, the lacto-fermented pickle, is ideally still alive. It's still living. So just like your yogurt has a culture, and oftentimes that is one of the things in yogurt is lactobacilli similarly, and it's growing, right? Meaning if I took it out of the fridge, it wouldn't just go bad, it would actually continue growing. It would just grow faster because it was in the fridge. But it's actually cultured or prepared food, right? So it's this process of this living thing. So the lactobacilli is actually a fermentation process, the other is a culturing process. But the vegetables, I have found in my life that my digestion, when I'm eating them consciously and consistently at each meal, or even just once a day, I've found my digestion and energy levels completely balance out. And so the interesting thing is, if you look at diets for women who have yeast infections, they will cut out all the sugar and they'll introduce these fermented foods. And what the idea is that you basically have yeasts in your gut that as you feed them white sugar, the yeasts begin to crave more and more sugar, right? So this is a really powerful paradigm to start to shift your thinking around what a craving is, especially for sugar, because you ultimately have these millions or billions of organisms inside you that are eating that sugar, and in a very real way, they are what are craving the sugar. So a system like a yeast infection, or just a lot of us who eat a lot of sugar, will be imbalanced, and it won't have enough of the lactobacilli compared to these yeasts, or however it works. I don't have the whole thing mapped out in my mind yet, but there's plenty of books about that if you want to read more about it. But basically the lactobacilli, we need them in our gut, and they're naturally occurring in this very simple pickling process of vegetables that basically most cultures used to eat, and we don't eat them anymore. So it's another one of the Weston A. Price Nourishing Traditions cookbook recommendation is to be eating these vegetables. Now you can buy these vegetables, you just have to make sure they're not pasteurized, because a lot of them will be. A lot of grocery stores are starting to carry them now. Bubby's sauerkraut is one brand, Ozuke is my favorite, they're out of Colorado. I don't know, we have a number in New York. We have like 3 or 4 local brands that I see pop up. Traditional kimchi is a fermented pickled vegetable that has spicy stuff added. Just check if it's raw or pasteurized. It'll say on the label, if it doesn't say raw or if it doesn't say raw or live or probiotics, something like that, then it's been pasteurized. And also, if it's not pasteurized, it's going to be in the refrigerator. Right? So you think about there's the pickles in the middle of the store. Remember, we're back to middle of the store, outside of the store. There's the pickles in the middle of the store that are on the shelf. Those are vinegar pickles that have been pasteurized, and they're can sealed, so they're shelf stable, right? And then we're talking about the live pickles that will probably be in like a specialty section in a fridge somewhere. So they're pretty expensive, honestly. Like if you really start eating a lot of them, which I had a teacher once say that he'd be happy to substitute all his vegetables for pickled vegetables. And I actually feel the same way. I think they're so delicious. So if you start eating that many, they're actually extremely cheap to make, extremely expensive to buy, extremely cheap to make. And so I'm including a free PDF of an ebook, a recipe book, which is from a company that sells various cultures and things. And it's honestly one of the best references I've ever seen on a subject of lacto fermentation, and the recipes are wonderful. So you can make big batches and have them going at your home. There are other types of living foods. You take something like kombucha. I like kombucha, it tastes good. I've never noticed a change in my digestion from it. Yogurt, I definitely have moments where I really want a kefir. Kefir is actually a fermented yogurt. There's these subtle differences I don't fully understand, but there's cultured yogurt and then there's fermented, somehow it's different. But I like kefir. I do eat a lot of yogurt, but I haven't found as big of an effect for that either. So certainly I recommend anything live. Of course, back to the raw dairy, if you can obtain it, that's awesome. Raw cheeses, if you can get them, are awesome. But just always be asking yourself, how alive is my food? And I really recommend that you go out of your way to find the fermented vegetables or make your own. It's something that is not on the sort of cultural scope of our food landscape, right? Once again, back to traditional diets versus marketing diets. And you go into the store and these products don't really exist yet. So they're just starting to appear as specialty products. So I do recommend you go out of your way to check those out. Yeah, so that's your assignment for today. Try to find some fermented foods or resolve to make some.